David Fetter, Executive Editor Technically for Prepared Foods. Welcome you to another Prepared Foods Media presentation. If anything good came out of the 3-year COVID pandemic, it would have to be the reinvigoration of healthy eating among consumers. And part of that is evident in the surge in consumers seeking foods that are plant forward, and that includes fruit as a key component. We asked research chef and consultant John Csukor to catch us up on what developers need to know when incorporating fruit ingredients in their products. John is a U.S. Marine veteran. Thank you for your service, sir. And I mean that from the heart. And he's also senior director and head of culinary for North America for the full-service food service agency Integra Performance Kitchen. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's jump into it. Please take us through the types of fruit ingredients that are in common use in processed food products and the sorts of formulations that they fit best.
Sure. I think that what's most unique to me as of late, David, is the particular need for this. Let's start with just the need. I think some of this might be the obvious, but I want to reinforce because a lot of our audience today is likely product developers. So I live in the space between the manufacturing community and the operator community. So I want to add credence and volume to the request from the operator community to clean up labels, to perfect what we offer as restaurateurs or as sellers of consumer products, that more and more so it's probably not as loud of an echo because I think there's almost a mainstay assumption that products will be clean label when they're launched. But we have some pretty large chain operators that we work with as the world's largest GPO that come to us. They're representative posse, if you will, of people who go hunting for ingredients for their menus. And their top requests are clean up the label, reduce the sugars, the refined sugars, get the stuff off the labels that our customers would be unhappy to read about. So I think that's nothing more than, based on the topic that we're embarking on in the next few minutes here, I think that adds credence and importance and purpose to why should we be looking at fruit ingredients, and let's throw a side nod to vegetables and starches too, right? Yeah. But why should we be looking at these things? And it's purposeful, it's the right thing to do, and it's an important thing from consideration to the nutritional value of what we produce as food manufacturers, right?
Yeah. In a nutshell, it's not your grandparents' consumer out there anymore.
Right.
So
yeah, I have to watch that phrase because I drive a Buick now, and it used to be it's not your dad's Oldsmobile or it's not your dad's Buick anymore, but I got a Buick, so there you go. So getting back to a little bit of looking at some fruits and so forth, I would say the thing that I see the most happening with, David, are really, first of all, there's a nod to American agriculture. People want to know that, oh, this is a Michigan blueberry puree or concentrate that I'm working with, or this is a California fig, or this is, a Texas, figs come from Texas too, of all places.
Yes, we have very good ones here.
Yeah, fantastic ones, in fact. But so point being, source is still high interest to product developers, or rather to operators. So product developers should be looking at that, much like a consumer staring at the package going, wow, this is made in Michigan or this is made in California. I think that product developers should be doing the same with their ingredients and really digging into source. So that's number one. Variety, I think, has a lot to do with function. So there's a lot of things in the nut world that are I think becoming more and more prevalent and sort of mainstay in how those are becoming mimickers. I've seen companies who've really gotten to the point of perfecting the nut blends that go into dairy-like products. I'm seeing, not only now has, for example, oat milk made its way into the mainstay CPG area as a dairy substitute, but other users of dairy-like products, like the ice cream industry, is really focused on this. I've traveled the world, David, as you know, and had a gelato by a company the other day that I would put a lot of money down to say that this was a full dairy product, and it wasn't. It was oat milk based. So I think the purpose around looking for a good fruit, looking for a good natural vegetable or fruit based ingredient, is to begin with the purpose. If it's color, look at those color mimickers and really understand that there's so much available to you without reaching for the food dye. To go to beautiful colors. There's technology now in extracting low temperature variation of extracting essence or concentrates that are not deteriorating those colors. So when you say, I want a blueberry, or I want a blue color, they're able to give you something that's more vibrant blue than we used to be able to, because technology has caught up to us and we're able to extract those colors and essence and flavors in a more concise way without heat degradation, if you will.
Right.
Um, and then, texturally, I continue to see and congratulate Southeast Asia for basically putting jackfruit on the map.
Yeah,
It
it's
might
been
seem
shown up
like
everywhere.
it might seem like one of those, oh yeah, I've already heard about jackfruit, but keep an eye on it, everyone, because I think it continues to grow, and not only now availability, but you over time you start to develop grades. You have a younger product which is more peach colored and more texturally significant to something that you might be developing, which is gentle and tender. You've got a sort of a teenage product now that has a more amber golden color that's really great as, say, a pot roast or pork replacer in a plant-based meal. And then a more mature product that I've seen dried and turned into jerky. So here's the same product that you have to now look at grades and look at how it's being processed and or distributed that might perfect its way into your formulation. So I think that's one thing I would encourage developers to do too, is do a deep dive into the source. Don't assume that the one jackfruit sample you got is the end all. There might be different textural, different color, and different fit and finish to the product variances that will really help your product development.
You're right. It's terroir at its most broad base, because everything you're going to use in a fruit product, like you said, whether it's a Michigan cherry or a Washington cherry or a Texas fig or a California fig, and then even from the farm to the farm to the farm, you're going to have anyone who's grown anything, you can even have variation from two different trees next to each other.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
absolutely. And there's cultivars that are becoming more and
right.
more prevalent, like really smart agricultural. But one thing I would say too, on when I've done development and when I've gone after fruit ingredients from a sourcing perspective, is if I compare, for example, the caramel coloring that I might get from a colorant company versus, let's just say, we're looking at a fig juice concentrate.
Mhm.
Um, it's called fig juice concentrate. It's not called caramel colorant, but it has that function, right? So if I'm doing a comparison, one of the really unique things I can encourage developers to think about that they're going to find is, typically my colorant will give me color, and it sort of stops there. And really great chemists and wise chemists were going after a color, so that's all it's going to give you. And there's no slight on that. That has its place too in product development. But what I find really unique about fruit-based ingredients, when it's bringing a color or a flavor, because I guess let's just say Mother Nature has its purpose, it usually comes with really great baggage. So I always, when I've done work with fruit companies or fruit concentrate companies, there's always sort of a prideful moment where they'll say, hey, besides being this colorant, there's a function here. And while we might consider it dried fruits or dried nuts, these are actually high functioning ingredients that might bring a little bit of unique sweetness with a reduced glycemic index, or it might bring a little bit of viscosimer purpose to a formulation as well. And I call that great baggage. That's now I've got an ingredient that's functioning in several different ways. And aside from all that, it is a fruit, so it's likely bringing some really unique flavor connotation that would be a great point of differentiation for whoever's developing the product. Wow, our scone tastes uniquely different. We're using an ambering agent. Turns out it's a fruit-based agent, and that brings a flavor profile to that scone that might be very different from the competition. That it's a serendipitous outcome of using that fruit in formulation.
Absolutely. It's a more than the whole is more than the sum of the parts like with ingredients like this. Very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, and so maybe just some areas too that I see. I call them kind of prideful moments for our industry. I would say beverage is a top area of development in using just really good natural fruit-based ingredients. Um, we all have heard of it and seen it, and now it's really mainstream. I've seen it in some quick service modules as well. The Tractor Beverage came out with their all natural line with sweetened only with cane sugar, but the reduction of added sugar is so remarkable. It's that, again, side baggage, the benefit of using pure fruit ingredients is they bring a lot of their own natural sweetness to the table. And I think that makes an encouragement to whoever's going after these beautiful natural colors and flavors in a beverage. It's going to bring sweetness to the table. And in some instances, for example, dried fruit can often bring some more glutamates to a formula that, wow, I get this beverage. I don't know why I'm hooked on it, but you don't even realize it's bringing a little bit of that umami profile as well to even a sweet beverage. So that's something that some of the tropicals like dragon fruit, jackfruit, rambutan, some of the uniqueness to those and why the flavors are so craveable is they're bringing other types of sweetness and other types of flavor values to the palate that we didn't grow up on here in the States with apples, oranges, and bananas.
Yeah,
But
exactly. Think of the difference between kaffir lime and a regular lime, and you've just got this with a kaffir lime from Thailand. You've got just this, and they're growing them in Florida now. I understand.
yeah,
You get this explosion of floral notes that are absolutely singular. You're not going to find that aroma, that flavor anywhere else.
yeah.
And look what it does to a good tom kha coconut soup. It's the difference between something very pedestrian and something very authentic.
That's a really great point. And in our economy, I would say this too, David, that one of the things we find with restaurateurs, particularly, and this can translate into manufacturing as well, but in our economy of inflation rising and inflation driving raw cost to us, the producers or manufacturers or creators of product in a restaurant, while our costs are going up, we have to reflect that on our selling price as well. And let me just say this, that statistically, I can't name a site right now, but I study these facts constantly for our clients. But statistically, consumers are willing to pay more because they bought in, they understand, they look at their own gas and bread pricing, so they know things have to go up. But we, as those manufacturers, producers, and creators of food, we can confidently raise those prices, but we have to live up to that price increase with something compelling. And I think that's a great aha moment where, to your point, why not create a new dessert or create a new beverage that uses key lime? Why not pair something up with like a Meyer lemon instead of just lemon? But adding that little value of something special about the flavor profile and calling out its origin or calling out its cultivar or calling out why is it so unique gives us that permission for that little bit of increase in retail pricing that the consumer is very willing to expect and understand. We just have to live up to that price with some really great flavors, right?
Absolutely. And even in the research has already shown that even in hard economic times like we're going through now, if I remember correctly, the consumer is willing to pay up to 25% more for either an organic or an exotic product compared to the mainstream. And that is important. Too often I hear of processors who are afraid of sticker shock, and of course they should be. You don't want to end up putting out a product that you have to buy back 1,000,000 pounds of, but you also don't want to be completely terrified to
Right.
put the appropriate price. Don't take advantage, put the appropriate price for adding these kinds of specialty fruits or any other specialty ingredient. No. Okay, now we were talking about fruits like rambutan, dragon fruit, sapote is gaining some traction. And I do think that processors should be looking at more of these because, but for one thing, we're talking about price here, that the prices are actually coming down on a lot of these. You have companies such as Melissa's bringing in, and I know they are geared more toward retail, not food product development and CPG companies, but they are bringing in enough of these fruits and other produce that it is helping to make it more price friendly, if you will, cost friendly. But there's also a lot of these can have a lot of waste. I'm thinking of fruits like sapote or lychees and rambutans, or loquats that don't travel well, don't have a long shelf life, are very soft, and yet their uniqueness is worth delving into. So, what would you say is the best way for a processor who wants to develop a product using some of these delicate, fragile fruit products? What's the best way for them to get around that challenge?
Yeah, so I'm going to back up just to the beginning of your prose there, because I think it's really important to note that these aren't so much exotics anymore. The vernacular, just the lexicon that we're using to chat with each other right now, isn't so foreign to the general consumer. Thinks that's one of the good things. There's many good and bad, but one of the great things about the internet is just that shared global knowledge, right?
Oh,
And so
absolutely.
I think that to your earlier point, we shouldn't be so afraid of jumping to what used to be an exotic, which now has become more appealing, understood, and sought after by consumers. So there's a first point to make. I think a
And,
second
and
point.
jackfruit, you use jackfruit as an example. That was spot on. 5 years ago or so, maybe a few more. You could ask around about jackfruit. No one knows about it, unless they came from a country that grew it. Today, everybody knows jackfruit, and companies like Jack and Annie's that put out the plant-based products made from jackfruit have kind of helped feed into that knowledge. So
Yeah,
sorry, go
and
ahead.
no, that's great. And I think I would encourage developers to seek concentrate companies, because a lot of them have wisely so have developed growing practice and or JVP with growers in foreign lands to bring in concentrates where they're able to capture the fruit at its best ripeness in one process and then package and bring and make available to us here in the States. But I think also the prevalence of seed stock making its way here. There's a lot of new crop being planted in the States. It's
Yes.
very interesting for me to see where some of the exotics are coming from. I'm not saying I've seen lychee being grown in Michigan. I'm not saying that, but I think it is interesting when you take a glance at, for example, like CDFA, and watch what California is growing today. It's a different theater than it was 10 years ago, by all means.
Florida,
So
Florida's been growing dragon fruit, and
beautifully,
yeah.
beautifully.
Although I got to say, the best dragon fruit I've had have come the yellow ones out of Ecuador. Very,
Mm,
very powerful flavor, which you don't seem to get from a lot of the other dragon fruit are more delicate. Then you get this yellow one from Ecuador that's a little bit smaller, but just packed with flavor. Very impressive. Even simple fruits. The best peaches that I've ever had were in Turkey. Just phenomenal peaches from Turkey. It was amazing. So, yeah, we also have to consider costs. So,
and one of the things on when I've done development work too is just, how to best approach incorporating these ingredients in formulation. And, oftentimes the formula itself dictates where the pH has to be. So we need to pair well with more or less acidic ingredients and how we can stabilize prior. Sometimes these concentrates have to be heat treated prior to going in formula, so that number one, their natural pectins aren't going to modulate our viscosomers, or texture is going to change later on. So pre-stabilization phase is something to consider. Certainly not super high temperature where we're going to degrade, lose our colors and flavors, but it's
Right.
possible that those fruits might need to previously be stabilized before they make their way into formula, is what I've found. The other is when it's not the case and you have a vibrant floral flavor, it's also important in formulation to protect that. And it could be, if it's a sauce, if it's something that's fluid in actual processing, to actually add a fruit or delicate ingredient like that later in the stage of mixing or assembling, like a delicate hot sauce that might have a sweet floral tropical fruit flavor finish, that could be added a little towards the end so it still has time to have its kill step, but it's going to retain more of that vibrant color and floral flavor. I know that may sound a little obscure to actually think like a chef when you get in manufacturing, but there's a reason the RCA was formed in, I believe, 1997, if I'm correct, is the incorporation of culinary mindset into the world of food technology. So that meant that chef's mentality does really benefit the process oftentimes, just like we would cook in a kitchen.
It's a very different world for product development, and that's kind of why we're here today, because this is the standard now, that you do seek out some of these exotic flavors and exotic ingredients and make them not so exotic by using them and getting good use out of them. So
yeah, I think it's a great example too. You were mentioning earlier about how time has modulated our viewpoints in fruit ingredients. I can go probably any even B tier city now that has some Vietnamese or Thai, and I can find a durian bubble tea. I guarantee it. Like, who would have thought one of the sweetest, most custardy fruit with the worst smell in the world would make its way into mainstream? But it's kind of a bubble tea thing. I know it's one of the favorites of my sons, who are 20 and 18. They love durian bubble tea. It's kind of crazy, but along those lines, I would say, let's not be afraid of exotics. Let's not be afraid of cultivars. Another new citrus flavor that popped up a few years back being this variegated striped lemon,
yes.
that has that kind of grapefruity Meyer lemon combination flavor. How wonderful would that be to incorporate into a new beverage and give a new citrus identity to the beverage world as well?
And another thing, for processors, if they spot an ingredient, one I'm thinking of off the top of my head, pink pineapple came out just a few years ago.
Yeah.
And at when they came out, it was 3-4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, they're like $30 a pineapple. And that if you're PepsiCo and you want to make a pineapple beverage, you're not going to use a $30 pineapple, but the more they could bring in, the more people bought them, supply and demand, and price was halved, and then it's on its way to being half again. So just for processors out there to just kind of keep an eye out on these ingredients and know that you could develop a product and have it ready to go when the price point comes down on that ingredient, because it will. And and that's how it's just a good thought to have in mind if you're a product developer, and spot these things and go, oh, I'd like to use that, but it's too expensive. Just be creative, do it.
Hang in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see, based on the one you just mentioned, I would hope that there is a big sorbet company, wink wink, we all know who they are, that does remarkable fruit flavors that would consider that in their lineup, not too far off. Or
Right.
another great beverage company that pink pineapple has a little different flavor to it as well. I tried it and it had almost a little bit of a honey
Yeah.
note. It's definitely more floral. So that could be a really remarkable crave-worthy flavor for the future.
I know you're tight on time today. I know you got another project you got to do in a few minutes. So let's close with some ideas that you want to share with our audience on The things you'd like to see processors do differently when it comes to using fruit and formulations?
I always say things like this, but I hope that people understand what I mean. It's protect the flavor. So the last thing an operator wants to do is get something that's hybrid or that's kind of PR'd as being, oh, this wonderful, I'm going to say pink pineapple, something or other, and they get it and it's lackluster. You know,
Right.
flavor forward has to be, again, part of the economy, the economic conversation we had earlier. The consumer wants the pop. They want the bigness. We're Americans. We love spice, right? And we like bold flavors. So live up to the expectation. Don't be faint. Spend that extra few cents it takes to add enough grams to the formulation to make sure if you say pineapple, that should be the first thing I taste when I'm consuming.
Very
Um,
good point.
yeah, and then I think lastly is just be encouraged to step a little bit off the center lane and try something that is exotic. We've talked about a lot of exotics today, and mix and match savory into sweet. That ube might initially someone might think of that as something savory, but I did a gluten-free molten that comes with all the starches and all the viscosomers naturally, the sweetness, the color is already in there. It's almost 90% of a batter. When I worked on it, I just had to add a little bit of egg or something that would be egg-like and a bit of a leavener, and I had a molten lava cake that came out of a Mary Chef in like 50 seconds. So
Um,
I'm encouraging to mix and match where you might have seen a hard border before, break the boundaries down and feel free to cross over and bring sweet into savory and vice versa. And just know that these ingredients are really substantial and they're going to come with performance beyond just the one thing you're looking for. Hey, we want the color. Well, it's coming with a great name, it's coming with a great flavor, and it's coming with some textures that might surprise you as well.
and some nutritional components, of course. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
the brighter the fruit, the more, of the various phytochemicals that are in there. So it's a nutraceutical ingredient that you can, in some cases, add to the marketing side of it. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. And then like we said a few minutes ago, not only to not be afraid to expand the envelope of your creativity as a research chef, but to do it ahead of the curve. Like we said with
Yeah.
the pineapple, yes, they're a little bit pricey now for CPG companies, but for the research chefs working for those companies, get on these things now, and then when the price does come down, you're ready to go out the door with a new product that's going to be very attractive to the global consumer that we have now.
Yeah.
So
Build the pipeline and never,
yeah.
never accept anything less than delicious.
Yes, amen. So we are out of time. John, I know there's so much more you can share with us on this topic and many others, so please come back
Love
sometime.
to.
And I want to thank the viewers and the listeners for joining us. I'm David Fetter, Executive Editor Technical for Prepared Foods Media, and we are with John Csukor, Senior Director and Head of Culinary for North America for Integra Performance Kitchen. And while Mr. Csukor couldn't cover everything here, of course, be sure to head to our website. You'll find a number of articles addressing challenges in incorporating fruit and other produce products, and a whole host of articles on all the challenges that you might be facing in food science and product development. Thank you all for joining us, and until next time.